Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dusty Blue, and today is March 5th, 2025. And today we're going to be talking about tackling some of the biggest issues facing independent cattle ranchers. From mandatory country of origin labeling, which is MCOOL, to mRNA vaccines and beef, to where your checkoff dollars are really going. Joining us today is a true champion for the independent cattle producers, Freddie Keaton. He's the owner of Keaton Cattle Company, serving in his fourth year as president of the Independent Cattlemen of Missouri. And he also works at the national level as the director for RCAF USA, representing Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Now, for those of you that don't know, RCAF USA stands for the Ranchers Cattlemen Action Legal Fund United Stock Growers of America. It's one of the largest cattle industry trade organizations in the country, fighting for independent cattle producers against the influence of multinational meat packers and unfair trade policies. Freddie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start with something that has a lot of Missouri ranchers fired up right here in Missouri.
Okay.
Mandatory country of origin, also known as MCOOL. It was repealed for beef and pork in 2015, and ever since, ranchers have been fighting to get it reinstated. Correct. So can you break down a little bit of what MCOOL is and why it's so important for independent cattle producers?
Well, MCOOL is a mandatory labeling policy that would require all meat, beef and pork, to be labeled the country of where it originated from. And so when they repealed that in 2015, then they had a labeling policy that would allow them to label all product of USA, as long as it was repackaged or handled in a packing house here in the United States. It could have originated from anywhere.
Where it come from, as long as it ended up in the United States, they could put a made in USA package on it.
Correct.
But the meat would be coming from Lord only knows.
I think we import from 27 different countries.
Now, in those 27 different countries, first thing that comes to my mind, now, again, I'm not real savvy on this particular subject, but I've learned a lot over the past couple weeks. 27 different countries, the first thing that my mind goes to is we have no idea what the regulations are on beef, cattle, or any other type of meat in those particular countries, but yet they're being shelled into this country and they're being mixed in with our meat and then getting labeled with Made in USA sticker.
Yes. And I mean, even though those other countries have to go through USDA inspection, they're still not as regulated or inspected as often as American companies are. So, and they get to use different use feed additives, antibiotic use. There's lots of different things.
So we have no idea how much chemical is being pumped into these animals overseas. 27 different countries. We have no idea. I mean, they could say one thing, but be doing something completely different, because now today's technology, with especially in the medical field across the world, I mean, they can just pump these things full of all kinds of steroids and everything else to really make them beefy, right?
Yeah. I mean,
off on that?
Yeah. Here's an example. A few years ago, one of the NFL teams was doing training camp in Mexico. Well, they was down there for a few weeks. Well, they come back to the United States, and of course, they go through drug testing. Well, they got popped for HGH. And it come HGH.
Okay, HGH. What is HGH?
Human growth hormones. And what had happened is they was eating beef in Mexico where they had used these hormones for growth, and it come back in their blood system.
That's wild.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just a small example of what could happen.
An athlete in Mexico eats beef, comes back, gets popped for growth hormones.
Yes.
Wow.
Because they get to use substances down there that are banned in the United States. in the cattle industry.
Interesting, because it's generally the other way around, right? Like most of our products are banned in their country.
Yeah, right.
But when it comes to the,
right.
you know, but wow, that would have to be a potent amount of chemical, right? Like to be transferred to the cattle, and then the cattle is processed, goes into a frying pan somewhere, cooked, consumed, and then transferred to the human body.
Right.
Dang,
right.
that sounds like that would have to be a potent amount of chemical.
And I don't know how much it takes to show up. I'm not an expert in that field.
I'm not even close to an expert, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just simple thinking, but I mean, that just seems so bizarre to me.
And then you think about these other countries that have foot and mouth disease, BSE or the mad cow. Let's see, it was last year, Brazil had 2 cows that tested positive for BSE, but we still maintained importing beef from Brazil.
BSE, that's mad cow disease, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I actually knew a guy one time that actually died of that down in Texas. He ate some beef down in Texas. That was probably, I'm going to say 18, 20 years ago. But yeah, he ate some of that, and he had just retired and got mad cow disease and killed him. Never did. Always wondered, like, how do you get that? Like, how does that even happen? And what is it?
Yeah.
Coming from other countries, and their cattle is diseased with this. I would assume it's probably something like a rabies, right? And like a coyote or something.
Well, it's I can't tell you scientifically how it works, but it's I think it comes from like their spinal cord area, and that's where they carry this disease. But I'm not certain of that, so don't quote me.
That's scary. That's scary. And they can. So what is the threshold? So if they allowed, okay, so they had 2 cattle that were infected with BSE. They United States continued to allow those cattle to come into this country from them. What's the threshold?
Correct. I don't know. We went to USDA and tried to get them to stop imports, and they was not interested.
So, I mean, obviously 2 is not the threshold. So is it 20?
Yeah.
Is it 200? Is it 2,000?
And that's the one time that all cattlemen's organizations come together and requested that they stop the imports from Brazil. But we still got nowhere.
As they should. And still got, why didn't we get anywhere?
The way I took it is, it was either the summer of last year or the summer before.
So recently. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're saying cattlemen's of the United States got together to push back on the USDA.
RCAF USA, U.S. Cattlemen's Association, and National Cattlemen's Beef Association. All 3 requested that we pause imports from Brazil.
USDA completely ignored that. That's obviously a lot of people in the country, and USDA pushed back against that and ignored it.
Yeah. But you have to keep in mind, 2 of our biggest beef processors are owned by Brazil. That supply beef.
And where are they located? What's their names?
JBS is one, and Marfrig is another.
And where are they located?
Well, they have processing facilities all across the United States, but they're headquartered in Brazil.
Interesting. And so they're 2 of the largest processing facilities in the United States is owned by Brazil.
Yes. We have 4 companies that control 85% of the beef that's processed in the United States.
And 50% of them are owned by Brazil.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, let's keep going here, because I got some other stuff I want to get into with this. I mean, this is very intriguing to me. So Missouri lawmakers have recently pushed a resolution urging Congress to reinstate MCOOL. I mean, this falls right into what we're talking about. Do you think they've made any progress, or is this just more political chatter? I mean, just more junk, right?
Well, as of now, it's still sitting in committee, has not been voted on, to my knowledge.
With the current Congress.
Yes.
So it was brought forth to the floor, this Congress, and it's in committee.
It was brought to the Rules Committee. It hasn't made it to
it's been heard. Okay. And go ahead.
We went and testified at the committee hearing. And
in DC.
No, this was in Missouri.
Okay, so you're talking about Missouri. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Yes.
So in Missouri, it was brought to the floor, pushed to committee, hasn't been out of committee back to the floor yet for vote. So
no.
Okay, gotcha. And who was that? Is that a resolution?
Yes.
Okay, so who brought forth that resolution, and was it in the Senate?
Yes, it was in the Senate. Senator McCreary, she presented one of the resolutions. We have two. Senator Mike Moon was the other one. The resolution numbers are SCR 5 and SCR 7.
SCR 5. So, folks, if you guys are listening, go and check out these bills and these legislatures that brought forth these bills. And let's make sure that we can reach out to them and continue to make this a priority, because as we well know, I mean, this is huge. I mean,
but you are correct. There is
alarming.
There is a bill in Washington, D.C. on mandatory country of origin labeling. It is in the Senate. It's Senate Bill 421. Our new majority leader in the Senate, John Thune, is the one who sponsored that bill and authored it. I think he's got 6 co-sponsors right now. Nobody from Missouri.
Well, isn't that? Yeah. So where is Holly on this? Where's Schmidt on this?
The only answer I've ever got from Holly's office is they wanted to wait and see if it got enough support before they would support it. So basically riding the fence. Senator Schmidt, when he was running for election, I met him at a Republican committee meeting here in Texas County, Missouri. And I point blank asked him if he would support this legislation, and he said he would. But he has not since he's been in office. And I have called his office a few times and left messages, and they don't even return my phone call.
But okay, so for me, this seems this just seems rhetorical. Like, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't we want to do this? What is the pushback? Why be on the fence about this? Why not? Or why are they trying to push back on this? I don't understand. Is it because of the processing facilities, the 50% makeup of the processing facilities that are made up by Brazil? Or is it something other? Is it nefarious? Or is it just ignorance? Or is it just low on the priority list? Like, I don't know. Very interesting. I don't understand why our 2 senators from right here in Missouri wouldn't do that, because they campaign on conservatism and doing the right thing and putting Missourians first, putting the American people first. Well, this is obviously not doing that. So if Josh Hawley or Eric Schmidt happens to see this video, we're talking to you. So please take this in consideration and reach out to Freddie Keaton and or myself. We would love to chat with you. Bring you on the show. Now, for the consumer, go ahead, Freddie.
They all run around campaigning on American First policy. it doesn't get any more American first than this, because this not only affects producers, it affects consumers as well. And every consumer has to eat. So, I mean, I don't know how you can't get on board with this.
Well, and not only that, I mean, this truly affects everyone in America.
Every one of them.
Unless you're someone of them Bill Gates eating fake meat stuff or whatever. But I mean, if you eat beef, which the majority of America does, it's like this is going to affect you either now or later. And why wouldn't we want to know at the very minimum what the hell is in our meat? Like, we don't know that when it's coming from other countries, and then you're mixing it in with our beef.
At least give the consumer the right to choose what product they buy.
At the very minimum. Yeah, at least put a sticker on there that says made in Brazil.
Exactly.
100% made in Brazil. Maybe it's cheaper. Maybe it's more expensive. Maybe it's Kobe. Right. Maybe it's Wagyu. Whatever it is. But at least it's all about transparency and accountability. And that's what conservatism is. That's what we are about. So we got to be transparent with the people. We've got to know what we're putting in our bodies. I mean, 77.3 million Americans just sent Trump to the White House on that exact mandate. Who did Trump appoint? RFK Jr. Maha, make America healthy again. How do we do that? We last night during Trump's joint session, right? He outlines very clearly that, 40 years ago, 10%, I believe it was 10%, don't quote me on these numbers, but 10% of children, were diagnosed with some sort of disorder. Nowadays, over 40%, almost 50% of the children nowadays are being diagnosed with some sort of disorder. I would argue it's probably largely because of stuff like this. It certainly, I think, has to do a lot with our food, and I think RFK is going to find out, but man, we've got to be transparent. We have to have accountability. We got to get this, because if not, we're simply not going to have a country left. Now, just to throw in my 2 cents, I mean, my personal opinion on this is I think it's extremely important, is because I was recently diagnosed with a tick-borne illness. I can't even eat beef anymore. And, went years suffering from an illness that I didn't know what it was until recently. In the last year, I was diagnosed with this. And it begs the question of why now? Why is there now these ticks that are being infected to make the people sick in this country? Literally make them sick if they eat beef, And now you have, going back to the USDA, you guys going to the USDA to stop the import of this coming in from Brazil. But they're not doing that. They obviously didn't want to hear that. Now we have ticks infecting people to be allergic to beef. Is this a war on beef is where I'm going with this? Like, why is there such a, it certainly appears to be a war on beef. What are your thoughts?
Well, funny you mentioned that. I have a good friend named Shad Sullivan. He's on Facebook. You guys ought to go check him out. But he gives this presentation on the war on beef. So, I mean, it's really fitting that you bring that up. There is a war on beef, partly because they want to control the land. Cattle producers are the last of the ag industries that are not vertically integrated. And so they can't control us yet. And we do have control over lots of land. So if they can ever get us broke and out of business, then that gives them what? The land. And that's what they want. And
Maybe for their solar panels and their wind farms.
Yes, and returning things back to how they were 200 years ago, nature conservancy. We need a place for the prairie dogs to live and all of this stuff.
We
You
get
know,
to it. What
but
what's his face out in California? Gavin Newsom. We got to save the fish.
yes,
We don't care if the land burns. We don't care if we got water. Let's just save the fish.
yes.
What an idiot, right? It's just wild times we're living in, but very interesting. War on beef. Go ahead.
It's all an attack on freedom and liberty.
Yep, always has been.
And like I'm blessed. I get to live probably the most free and independent lifestyle of anybody. I'm out here on my land. I'm not punching a time clock. I don't really answer to anybody other than the consumer who buys my product. You don't get any more free than a rancher. And I think they detest that. I really do.
Probably a little jealousy. Yeah. Because, and that's the thing about the Midwest in the United States is we're largely independent by nature.
Yes.
We fundamentally believe in small governments. Stop with the red tape and the restrictions. Let us live our lives, our God-given freedoms. All right, mRNA vaccines in cattle and the food supply. Let's shift gears. Something that's been, obviously making a lot of headlines and raising concerns is obviously the mRNA vaccines in general, but especially in the cattle. There's people saying that the mRNA vaccines are already being used in beef and cattle and making their way into the food supply. Others claim it's just fear-mongering. Freddie, what's your thoughts? What's your story? Are mRNA vaccines currently being used in Missouri cattle or anywhere else in the U.S.? I know this is a hot topic.
To my knowledge, no.
Not in Missouri, not in the United States.
Not in the United States.
Okay.
The only place I know that mRNA is being used would be in the swine industry.
Yeah. I can see that.
But
go ahead.
It is coming. It's not being used yet, but it is something that we need to have our radar up about, and we do need to be concerned about. Now they're talking about a bird flu vaccine for beef cattle, which will be an mRNA vaccine. Why do we need to use a bird flu vaccine on cows when we haven't had any death loss in cattle to bird flu? Makes no sense.
They want to keep us sick, man. Pharmaceuticals, big pharma. They want to keep us sick.
Yes.
If we stay sick, they stay rich. Bottom line, it's that simple.
You are seeing some states, in which Missouri was one of them a couple years ago. We had a legislator, Holly Jones, who presented legislation in the state of Missouri wanting to require beef or any meat that had mRNA vaccines to be labeled that way. Of course, it didn't go nowhere. But since then, there is several other states that are trying to pass the same kind of legislation. But I say it goes all the way back to MCOOL. In order to label this stuff, we have to know country of origin.
Well, and that just jumps me right into this next question is, there are some Missouri lawmakers that tried to pass a bill requiring labels on beef products if gene editing or mRNA technology was used. That bill didn't pass.
Correct.
What can be done about that? Why didn't it pass? This is why I pause, because this is the part where I scratch my head, Freddie, is been in this state my whole life. I love this state. It's got a lot to offer. Politically, it's been a red state for a number of years, predominantly red. But yet, we can't get conservative stuff done. We can't get red stuff done. Like, why not? Why wouldn't a bill requiring labels on beef products with gene editing or any sort of mRNA technology that was used, why can't we just put a sticker on that to tell the people right here in Missouri? Like, I don't understand. We live in a red state. Statewide offices controlled by so-called Republicans, right? state Senate, House of or the state representatives, all the way to the executive branch is all held by so-called Republicans. But yet we can't ever get anything done because of these rhino establishment Republicans. That's what I'm going to say. I don't know what your opinion is, but it just baffles my brain when I see something like this. Like, why can't that pass? Why didn't that pass? Right?
You're exactly right. My take on it is go back and follow the lobby groups.
There you go. Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Every time. We just had Justin Sparks on here a while back, and he talked about this very thing. Follow the money. They all got the envelopes at the winter caucus, and these representatives that were coming in, and hey, if you pay this amount of money, this is going to happen, and that's what it all is a pay-to-play scheme ran by donors, special interest groups, and bureaucrats, not your elected officials. Now we have this. Do what?
And trade organizations.
Now we have this so-called, I'm getting off topic, but hey, this opens up a whole can of stuff for me, man. Like it's, now we have this Doge program in Missouri ran by Ben Baker and other establishment rhino Republicans. But, what's really going to be done? We need an Elon Musk right here in Missouri, ladies and gentlemen. Elon Musk, we need someone like him right here in the state of Missouri that doesn't give a damn. That says we are going to put the people first. We're going to end this bureaucracy. We're going to get rid of these special interest groups and these people that aren't even showing up to their office buildings. It's high time we start doing conservative things because the state has been red for so long. Like, why can't, it baffles my mind. I think another topic for another day, Freddie, but feel free to jump in, man.
Well, my last trip to Jefferson City on this MCOOL resolution. You want to know who was there to testify against it?
Ooh, this one ought to be good. Now, okay, was this in the Senate?
This was in the Senate Rules Committee.
Who was there to vote against it or to speak out against it? I'm going to take a wild stab here and say Cindy O'Loughlin.
Oh, she's on the committee, but we were given the opportunity to testify.
Okay, so I misread the question. I thought maybe you said a legislator spoke out against it. Okay, so you're talking about a person that came there to the committee to speak to the legislatures and spoke out against it. My apologies. I stand corrected.
Yes.
So who was there to stand? Go ahead. No, I don't know.
Missouri Farm Bureau.
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Missouri Cattlemen's Association. And the Pork Council.
Now, a Farm Bureau, Missouri Cattlemen's Association. Now, didn't they all endorse Mike Kehoe for governor?
Every one of them.
Every single one of them, folks. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, like if you haven't caught on yet, please go back and watch some of my other content. This is almost a broken record. Mike Kehoe, here we go with all these liberal organizations that want to come out and speak out against basic. I wouldn't even argue that this is red legislation. This is common sense legislation.
Yes.
Then you have organizations like Farm Bureau. We all know how big they are, right? They come out to speak out against this type of legislation. They're the same ones that's endorsed Mike Kehoe for governor during the primary. Sad. It's just freaking disgusting is what it is.
Yes, it is. And I will bring up one point here. And this kind of goes back to MCOOL and all of it. But since 1980, the United States has lost over 50% of its farmers and ranchers.
Elaborate on that.
So,
50% of the land, 50% of the farmers. So ranchers have gotten bigger, or elaborate on that a little bit.
There's definitely been consolidation. So yes, the people who are in have gotten bigger.
So part of that is consolidation, but largely, I guess another part is that they just shut down because they couldn't afford it, moved out. What's your thoughts?
Well, my thought is it's an aging population. no young people are coming back to it.
I see what you're saying.
And so, like, now it's the average age of a farmer is about 65.
Okay.
That's the average age. So they're all getting to retirement age. And we're going to start losing them more and more each year. And nobody's coming into the business. But my point to that is we've had the same lobby groups dictating ag policy since 1980, which is Farm Bureau, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, all of these big national groups, and at the state level as well. They've dictated this policy that has got rid of 50% of your farmers and ranchers. If we don't change who is lobbying for us, how are we going to change the fact that we're losing producers at alarming rates? Does that make sense?
I mean, the first thing that hits my brain is that it's deliberate.
I mean, that was the one thing that I shared in my testimony in Jeff City, is until you guys quit listening to the corporate lobby and start listening to the actual people out here doing the work, we're going to end up with the same result. But they're going to take the corporate money every time. You can't do the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. We have to change course. And apparently Farm Bureau, Missouri Cattlemen's are not getting it done. Start listening to somebody else. That's my advice.
So what do you say to the people who are worried about the mRNA vaccine technology will eventually be forced on cattle ranchers without their consent? See, you and I we talked about this just a minute ago, that it's coming. So
Correct.
Say to the people that are worried about it, go ahead.
You need to get on board with actual producers and trade groups that support producers. And let's get some support out here and try to get some legislation passed to stop it. Quit voting in these rhinos.
Yes, right? I mean, I'm convinced in 2028, I think the state's going to become a swing state. At the rate that we're going, because, this is just, it's.
One this year.
Well, yeah, a part of me was there, but I knew we were still just a little bit out. But I think it's coming. I really do, because there's a lot of things happening, especially with the GOP, and all of the county committees and all that good stuff. There's a lot of things moving behind the scenes that I think are going to directly affect how things are going to happen in 2026 and certainly 2028. But yeah, if we're not careful and people don't wake up and stop just voting off of some sort of name recognition, somebody like Kehoe, again, like never went out one single time to any of the debates, drove around the state in a Chinese-owned bus, no accountability, and wins the primary simply off of name recognition and endorsements from these, what I say, left-wing organizations.
If you will look at his endorsement list, and I'm just going to speak from the ag community because that's where I'm from.
Sure.
He got the endorsement of every big ag group in the state. Every one of them.
But not the independent guys.
What's that?
Not the independent ranchers like yourself.
No. He did not.
There's the issue, right? He said, they keep falling right into the trap. They'll keep taking that money and from these big corporations, these big organizations, instead of listening to the constituents. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about the beef checkoff program a little bit.
Okay.
So obviously, let's talk about the money, right? The beef checkoff program, ranchers are required to pay, correct me if I'm wrong here, required to pay $2 for every head every time they sell. It's supposed to fund the beef marketing research and education. Obviously you're pretty deep in the industry. So do you think the beef checkoff program actually helps independent cattlemen? And correct me if I'm wrong on the $2 amount.
You're wrong on the $2 amount. It is $1 a head. There are some states that do have to pay $2.
I see. Okay.
They voted that extra dollar in their state. But every state in the nation pays at least $1.
And where does this money go? Is it go to marketing, research, education? Where does it really go? Obviously that's what the news articles are going to say, right? But where is the money really going?
Well, at the national level, the way the checkoff system works is I pay $1 for every head that I sell. 50% stays here in Missouri. The other 50% goes to the national level.
So how much money in Missouri, you probably have this information, I do not. How much money in Missouri is this equivalent to?
Oh, I don't have it broke down for the state. My guess is going to be between $1 million and $2 million.
Is what the state's going to receive from that 50% proceed from the dollar.
Yeah.
So 50 cents of every dollar, right?
Yeah. I know nationally it generates about $80 million a year. One lobby group receives about 70% of that money.
Whoa. Okay, what lobby group?
National Cattlemen's Beef Association.
Could have guessed. And what are they doing with the money?
Well, they will tell you that they are doing research, and they will tell you that they are educating, and they are promoting. But we don't see much evidence of that. The only thing I've seen them produce in the last 20 years is a flat iron steak out of the whole deal.
Yeah.
We're putting on, we go sponsor NASCAR now. They have an office in DC, where they get to go lobby all the time. They will not conduct an audit. We got one audit in 2010. They redacted almost all of it to where we couldn't see what it said. And there hasn't been another audit since. So we actually don't know what our dollar is doing.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it's a scam.
It's a total scam.
I will say this. It was implemented in 1985, which is 40 years ago. There has never been a referendum vote. There has never been any adjustments made to what the checkoff can or cannot do. It hasn't changed in 40 years. And we've lost 50% of our farmers and ranchers since it's been in place. So what's that tell you?
It ain't
Who's
working.
it working for? Who's it working for?
That's right. It definitely ain't you, Freddie.
That's right.
It ain't for the constituents. It ain't for the everyday ranchers.
No. And
the checkoff program benefits big meat packing corporations. What's your take on that? Do you think that money goes to the meat packing corporations, or now we've discussed that it went to obviously some of these big organizations, right? They did the audit, redacted it, but the meat packing corporations, a little bit different story there. What do you think?
No, it doesn't go to them, but it advertises their product free of charge.
I see. Okay, so that's kind of where they're spinning that then. Yeah.
I sell cattle, not beef.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now
the future. Okay, so you've been in the fight for how many years have you been in the fight here?
I didn't get engaged till 2019.
2019, but you've been a rancher for how many years?
All my life.
Yeah. So between MCOOL, mRNA concerns, and the Checkoff program, I mean, it's pretty obvious the independent ranchers are, I mean, you guys are constantly up a brick wall battling the system. So where do you see the Missouri cattle industry in the next 5 to 10 years? Are we headed in the right direction?
No.
Obviously not. What changes do you think? I mean, I don't know. What do you think would be the number one thing that if you could change right now? Now, we talked about the packaging and all of that. We kind of talked about the checkoff. What is the number one thing that comes to your mind that if you could wave a magic wand that you would change right now?
Yeah. Enforcement of our antitrust laws is probably the biggest issue. It and MCOOL are right there at the top for me. I can't choose between the two.
I mean, MCOOL, for me, that just from our conversation, that seems to be the number one thing for me. We got to know what the hell's going on in our bodies.
Well, from a producer standpoint, they use these imports as leverage to drive our market down. And they say they do that to bring the cost of beef down. But I don't see the consumer getting a break on their end. And so to me, we have to return a bigger percentage of the retail dollar back to the producer. 30 years ago, the producer would receive about 67% of the retail dollar. 2020, it got down to about 37%. We have managed to gain some of it back, and we're at about 53% of the retail dollar now.
The producer.
So, the producer.
Okay.
There's too many people that's making way too much money on the other end.
Right.
And we have to figure out a way to make producers profitable, but still provide a reasonably priced product for the consumer.
Makes sense. I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, obviously we got to make money, but it's also got to be affordable, right?
Yes.
So for the everyday consumer who wants, go ahead.
You ask, if we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
I see it really hard for a young person to get into this business. And for multiple reasons. But if you're going to go out here and invest $1 million or $2 million, you're going to have to do more than break even. You're doing it to provide for your family. So we have to make it a way that a young person can be profitable.
Yeah, because it's expensive to live nowadays. So if it's not profitable, it's hard to entice or retain anyone to stay in the industry.
Correct.
Yeah. So for the everyday consumer who wants to support American ranchers, Missouri ranchers, what's the best way for them to make sure they're buying real homegrown Missouri beef, Freddie?
Well, really the only way that is to shop local and buy off a rancher himself.
Yep.
And the farm to table movement has grown, and it's a good deal. So I would recommend you contacting somebody and buying it direct.
My family, my wife and I, that's what we've done for years is, obviously I'm allergic now. Of course, my wife and kids aren't, but I am. And, but yet they still eat beef. So we still have beef. We just don't buy as much. But yeah, we've always bought local. We go and buy the beef from one of our local ranchers right here in town. And they take it to the processor. We buy it and put it in a freezer. We know exactly what's going in our bodies. And so for those of you listening, if you guys haven't considered that or have questions on that, Freddie, how can are you on social media? Do you have an email? You're the president of the Cattleman of Missouri, the Independent Cattleman of Missouri. How can they get a hold of you if they wanted to learn how to buy local? What does that look like for them? How would they do that? Or if they have questions or concerns or perhaps suggestions to some of these issues that they've heard today, how could they get a hold of you?
We do have a website. It is independentcattlemanofmissouri.org. We have a Facebook page, Independent Cattleman of Missouri. Personally, I have my own Facebook page, Freddie Keaton, or Keaton Cattle Company. And they can also, I'll give you my phone number. They can reach out to me directly if you want.
Well, we will put that into the comment section as far as the phone number. But if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to him or myself. This has been a very eye-opening conversation for me because I was born and raised in a small town right here in Missouri, and I don't know a lot about the farming industry. I've been in the construction industry most of my life, and the military and so forth. And this is Freddie. I truly appreciate you coming on. Because I've learned a lot. I hope that the viewers were able to consume some of this information and to get some knowledge on it, because this is it's not just about us. It's about our kids, soon to be grandkids in this world that are growing up in the United States. And obviously Missouri has a lot of issues. And the only way in my opinion, to combat a lot of these issues is to get knowledge on it, to get information, to do research on this stuff. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for joining the show tonight. If you guys like the content, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and go back to some of the other videos that we've done with some of our legislatures right here in Missouri, and a lot of eye-opening conversations that we've had over the past few months with our legislatures and Freddie Keaton with the Independent Cattleman of Missouri. Freddie, thank you so much for coming on. God bless you guys, and we will see you on the next one.